All right, we are recording.
All right. Well, we're on to week 4.
Yep.
Um, I am recording live from the laundry room at our parents'.
Yep.
There is a thin wall separating the two of us this week.
I'm in my usual seat at my desk. I don't know what you did here, but my chair, it is askew. It's not sitting right. But
I don't know what I did either. Skew. um, all right. So 3-2 last week. We have improved by a pick each week, which means that we'll go 4-1 this week and 5-0 next week,
that would be
uh,
nice.
which is exciting. Um, let's see. All right, so last week's games, what did we try to remember what we hit on? So we hit on Titans. Um, we were right there. Sniff that out. We were right on the Dolphins.
Yep.
Uh, we were right on the Broncos. So that was a game. I think you actually sweat, kind of flipped me, um, like during the call. Um, we were in we were in it with the Bucks, kind of down to the end there. Obviously needed them to get that 2-point conversion, to try and send it to overtime against the Packers. Didn't happen. So lost that game. And then we lost the Pats, although kind of a weird game. Like
Yeah, I
felt
mean,
like
on paper, it looks like we never were in it, but I mean, the Pats were what, down five and had the
yep,
ball, had the opportunity to take the lead a ton of times. I think they turned it over 3 out of 4 drives to end the game.
yeah. I mean,
And
back into
so I mean, and then I think it was after the Aguilar fumble. That's when they drove down, scored, made it double digits. But I mean, we were right there the whole time. Maybe we weren't really. I mean, we were winning at what, half, and then always within striking distance. But they just kept shooting themselves in the foot.
yeah, yep. And then I know we were texting kind of during the day at one point, but um, we definitely sniffed out that Colts Chiefs line.
Yeah,
Didn't have enough conviction to take the pick, but definitely kind of felt like it was a bit of a rat line. We're kind of trying to figure out whether or not we should be on that side of it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, overall, I kind of felt like we had a pretty good read on a lot of the games last week, and again, even the two games that we didn't win, I didn't necessarily feel like we were way off
yeah,
in both of them. Obviously need some breaks to go our way, didn't get them, but felt like we had generally pretty good read on last week's games, which is
yeah.
good. So. All right, well let's move on to week 4. Let's get into the picks. So first game, um, we've got Vikings and Saints. This is a London game. So there is no home team. Vikings are 2.5-point favorites.
Yeah. So I'm actually. So for me, this is. I mean, unless you really like it, this is kind of a pass for me.
Yeah.
I think the Vikings. They seem like the obvious pick. They're coming off a loss. It's a, you know, quote unquote 1 o'clock game. Obviously, they're playing with the time difference in London, but I do fear that the London game does get a little wonky. Jameis hasn't been practicing this week, but I have seen that they're talking about him still playing this week. And either way, it kind of gives me the same energy as that Vikings game last year against the Cowboys when it was looking like it was Dak, and then all of a sudden it was late rolling, and then Cooper Rush came in to start, and all of a sudden, not only did the line shift, but then the Vikings cover or the Cowboys covered and then won outright. As pretty decent sized dogs. And it kind of gives me the same vibes as that. If Jameis doesn't play at it, if we took the Vikings right now and Jameis got ruled out, I'd actually feel more uneasy just because of how weird it gets once the line starts moving like that. And I think it would be what Andy Dalton would be the starter, and that's really not that bad of a backup to have in that spot. So, um, you know, kind of just out of the weirdness of it, I do like the Saints here. Is it really a thing that I want to rely on? Betting on something just because the London game gets weird, not necessarily, but I do feel like this is maybe a sneaky 2.5 line.
Yeah, like every way I look at it, I'm just like the Vikings seem like the obvious pick, and this line doesn't really feel like it's right to me, which
Yeah.
makes me think, it actually makes me concerned. Um, and like you talked about Jameis, like the flight to London. How did that treat his back? Landry hasn't practiced. Michael Thomas hasn't practiced. There's like all these reasons that I look and I'm like, downgrade the Saints.
Yeah.
Um, the Vikings 2-1. They did get the win against the Lions last week. They had to battle. Um, they had to battle for it, but they do seem relatively healthier. I think there's some questions around Dalvin Cook and whether or not I think his shoulder's acting up again. Favorites are 18-12 against the spread in the London games. Dennis Allen as a head coach is 14-25 against the spread, which is not good. Um, but like Vikings minus 2.5 just seems too low on paper, and it seems like they want you to take the Vikings, which
Yeah, because
again,
I feel like the line might be downgraded a little bit just because there is the uncertainty. I do think that Jarvis Landry played or practiced today, and then the Michael Thomas thing, that just feels like something where he's just
man,
going to end
like
up playing
management,
anyways.
load
And
management,
so if they come out of here with a full roster, I'm checking what the spread is right now, see if it's changed at all. It's the same, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just a pass for us, but I do. I don't know. I think if we took the Vikings, I just feel a little uneasy just because of how weird the games can kind of get, and if it
yeah,
just gets a little ugly, becomes a little bit of a dogfight or something. Um, you know, whatever.
yeah. And at the same time, it's like similar to like Colts Chiefs last week, and I think some other lines where we've kind of sniffed out. Like it seems obvious, and maybe that's why it's not the obvious pick.
Yeah,
Is do we actually take
yeah,
do it with the Saints,
yeah,
but I think let's maybe come back to it. But having talked through it, I feel like it's more of a lean to the Saints
yeah, for sure.
than the other side. So all right, let's move on to the next game. So we've got the Colts at home minus 3.5 against the Titans. These are two teams that are both coming off their first wins. One certainly bigger than the other.
Yeah.
You know,
I like the Titans here. I think it's kind of the same vibes that we had kind of going into that Colts game where,
I,
I mean, I know the Titans have looked bad, but the Titans are also one bad play call away from being 2-1. If Mike Vrabel just calls a running back dive to Derrick Henry instead of a tight end sweep to some guy I've never heard of, then the Titans, they covered week one. They went outright week one. That's it, because they get the 1 yard that they needed. They end up not
yeah.
allowing that comeback to the Giants. So I do think that there's maybe the Titans are a little underrated here.
Mhm.
I feel like the Titans kind of go on a sneaky run every year, and it's kind of how, since Vrabel's been there and they've had Derrick Henry and they've kind of hit their stride with Henry and Tannehill. It's kind of how they just managed to always kind of be in the discussion where they were the top seed last year, and they're always kind of competing for the division and being one of those top seeds, and it's always so sneaky, right? It's like I feel
Yeah.
like you kind of blink and then it's week 12 and the Titans are a game back of first place or something. And so I feel like the Titans they're undervalued. I feel like they could kind of go on a run here. I don't really think the Colts are that great. I don't think Matt Ryan's that great. Just
Yeah.
because they covered or they won last week, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I feel like that's just one of those spots like that we sniffed out, and that's the type of shit that happens all the time.
Mhm.
In NFL football, I don't think it's necessarily like the Colts beat the Chiefs. Should we start taking them seriously? I think that's just kind of what the parody of the NFL is. So, knee jerk reaction. I like the Titans. Um, last week, I feel like they started leaning on their veterans a little bit more. Traylon Burks, he was actually on the field and got the highest snap
Yeah.
percentage that he got all
Yeah.
season,
Yeah.
but he actually
Yeah.
didn't have much actual usage, which was funny because he's been so efficient in his limited usage the first couple weeks, and then when he finally gets all the usage, they don't throw to him.
Yeah.
But the offensive coordinator was talking about how they want to get him more involved as well, but they were leaning on Robert Woods last week, and they were really pounding the rock with Derrick Henry, and I feel like they were just like, you know what, backs against the wall. We just got to grind out this win, kind of get that monkey off our back. Now let's kind of get back to playing our football. So I like the Titans here. I like them, especially getting the hook on that 3.5. I know Jonathan Taylor has been questionable all week. I don't know if he's been practicing yet, but I think this is just another one where, kind of a letdown spot coming off the huge win for the Colts.
Yeah, that's where I was kind of leaning to. But initially I'm like, well, both teams coming off those wins, but the Chiefs win looks more impressive than a Raiders win. Because the Raiders just look like a lost football team. But I agree. I mean, this does feel like a bounce back spot. I think, if anything, these are two evenly matched teams. And perhaps maybe even give an edge to the Titans, just given that I don't think Matt Ryan is, I think he's washed.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too, Tennessee has dominated and covered 4 of the last 5 games between these two teams,
Yep.
including
That's what I was about to look up.
Yep. Indy's 0-4 against the spread in their past 4 games as a favorite. So getting 3.5 plus we get the hook. Again, I feel like, two teams that actually are evenly matched. Your point about the Titans, in some ways could argue they're 2-1, not 1-2. Yeah, I think you take the points on this one. So
Yep.
I like that pick. Okay, all right. So we'll mark that as a pick for now. Next game, we've got the Giants at home -3 against the Bears.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, one of these teams will be 3-1, which is, so funny. But
Yeah,
um,
unless
I
they're
don't know.
tied.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really have a read on this game. I kind of lean the Giants as home favorites. I feel like they've looked more competent. I mean, they definitely could have been, they were in that game this past week, Monday, and
Mhm.
um, they easily could have been 3-0. It's not like they were, it's not like everything came crashing back down to earth, like, against the Cowboys or anything. And
No, they were.
I mean, I just feel like Justin Fields hasn't looked that good. I mean, part of me does worry that maybe there's just going to be a week where Justin Fields kind of has that game and we kind of see we're reminded of why he was such a highly rated prospect and stuff like that. And, they have been moving the ball well and they've been finding a way to win kind of despite him. So I do worry about that a little bit, but I don't know. I like Daboll. I like the Giants at home. I feel like they've been playing kind of well. So I lean that, but this isn't really a game I have much interest in.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, uh, I don't think I have a good enough read that I would feel comfortable taking either side on this.
Yeah.
I just don't. I mean, and I'm like looking at some of the trends, and they're not necessarily favorable for either side. In terms of any sort of ATS trends. Um, you know, I do think the Giants they look like a different football team with a healthy Saquon. To your point, they were in that game on Monday night. But then again, it's also like, it's the Cowboys with Cooper Rush.
Yeah.
Not sure how much to read into that. And with the Bears, it's Khalil Herbert it seems like is going to kind of take over with Montgomery out. Could actually be a better thing for them. How
Is
does
that
the
how
off?
you think it's pronounced? Because you always say it like that.
I have no idea how
It
that's
is
pronounced.
Herbert. It's just...
I don't know. I don't know. For some reason, it's in my head that he's like French or something. I I don't know. I feel like I heard it sometime,
Yeah.
but it never questioned it. All right. Khalil Herbert. Um
Because I've noticed you've said it like that in the past.
yeah,
I know it was like an inside joke with yourself, or if it was just,
just with myself.
yeah.
Yes. um but yeah, so I'm kind of curious to see like how is the offense with just him? Does it change? Does to your point about Fields, maybe this is one of those games where it's like, you know, a battle of kind of two youngish quarterbacks, and Fields is the better athlete. He's probably the better quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, the more we talk about it, the more I kind of just lean to the Bears because I think it's just another one where, maybe it's more even of a matchup than it might actually seem. Like maybe this is just more of a pick 'em. And I mean, I guess that's kind of, given the whole 2.5, 3 point thing that Vegas supposedly does, as a swing for a, for a home game. I
Yeah.
guess this is kind of graded as an even matchup, and kind of in that spot. Maybe I do like the Bears more actually.
Hmm.
Um, maybe they do just kind of keep it on the ground, and maybe Fields kind of just holds on to the ball and can be efficient. I don't think he's been too bad with his passes. I think it's more just the fact that why are they only throwing it 11 times with him? And
Yeah.
that I think that's the more concerning part than it necessarily, how he's looking when he passes. But
Yeah.
yeah, maybe in a tight matchup like this, maybe I actually do lean the Bears more.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think it's a
because
I
I
think
mean,
we could.
overall, I don't think the Giants are a good team. I just think that maybe they haven't looked totally incompetent. I think Dabwall might be onto something in there, but I mean, Daniel Jones is very clearly not a great quarterback, and their receiving options aren't great either. So I mean, maybe I actually
Nobody's,
do lean the Bears here.
certainly like in terms of the receiving options, like nobody's really kind of jumping at the opportunity.
No,
Uh,
and like Sterling Shepard, he's out. He just pops his
yeah.
Achilles.
Yeah. Or ACL, right?
Oh, I don't know. I just know on the field it looked like an Achilles, just how he pulled up. It could be ACL though.
I thought he was grabbing it. I think it was an
Yeah.
ACL. I think he was grabbing at his knee, but I mean, regardless, he's done. Yeah. So yeah, yeah, it is probably more of a lean to the Bears.
Yeah.
But we can mark it as such and come back and
Yeah.
just where we are as we get through the rest. All right. Next game we got the Ravens hosting the Bills and they're catching 3 against Buffalo.
I lean the
Um,
Ravens here as the home dog. I don't know exactly what the status of some of the guys on the Bills are, but I think regardless, they're still going to be pretty banged up on that defense.
yeah.
I think the Ravens might be kind of getting in a groove. I'm kind of drinking the Kool-Aid here. I think they look really good. I think this is a Lamar MVP season. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I think it's just worth kind of riding that out. And I think that
Yeah.
the Bills are a team that they can maybe afford to lose a game like this more than the Ravens can. Though I do think that both are going to be fine regardless of the result. But I like the home dogs here. I feel like there's maybe somewhat of a as kind of obvious as it sounds. I think the recipe's kind of out there for playing the Bills, and I think it's they have no rushing game, and it's kind of when you force Josh Allen to kind of be perfect and be Superman. If you fall short of that, then you have a really good chance of taking down a very good team. And I think the Ravens are a well coached team, of course, with Harbaugh there, and they obviously have the weapons, both on the offense and the defense. And
Mhm.
yeah, I like the Ravens here. I think that they're the team that's in the groove. I think the Bills, they're coming off that loss. They're also, I mean, they complain a ton. Like I'm starting to get a little tired of Josh Allen now. It's like he's always complaining. He's always, it's a lot of like the stuff. It's kind of like the LeBron looking thing. I mean, even like how Brady and Manning do it too. But that's Brady and Manning, and a lot of times it's because they're purposely trying to draw that or something. But it's like Josh Allen every time, whether it's measuring 1 inch on a first down, or if he wants to say that it was a incomplete pass instead of a fumble on a sack or something, it's like he's always right up on the refs when they're discussing their calls. And I
Yeah.
think that the Bills they're starting to get maybe a little too big for their britches for a team that's been very good but hasn't won anything. And
Like
I think the Ravens might be a little more locked in here.
it's like, somebody needs to remind the Bills that your best result is a AFC divisional loss.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Like
like I mean, anytime that there's
somebody-
like a flag on the field, the refs are all huddled up. Like Josh Allen's
yeah,
like right in there, and once he
yes,
hears that it's not going his way, he's got like some huge dramatic reaction. And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I think the Bills are getting just a
They're
little too
drinking,
cocky right now.
they're drinking their own Kool-Aid.
Yeah,
Maybe, maybe he's gonna hold them back. I mean, here's a reality too. Like they do kind of have to win this game
yeah,
because they've lost, they've now lost an in division game early in the season. They're a game back with a loss to the Dolphins. If the Dolphins win tonight and they lose this weekend, they're now 2 back with that loss. Like that's an early hole they're digging themselves.
yeah,
Um, and but there are some trends that point to the Ravens. 14-2 as a home dog since 2018. That includes 9-1 with Lamar against the spread. They're also 12-2-1 against the spread when the line is between +3 and -3 since 2019. You touched on it, but the Bills are coming off a really tough loss. They were on the road in Miami. That game was exhausting. I think it took a lot out of them, and I think it's really difficult to come out of there feeling like you should have won the game, but you didn't. And now you're on the road again, and you've got to play an opponent like the Ravens, who are incredibly explosive.
Yeah.
Um, and the Ravens are coming off. I mean, that was, that was a good win for them in New England.
Yeah.
We talked about that game a little bit earlier. Um, but New England was kind of hanging around, and then the Ravens jumped on some opportunities, and they did put them away late. But like they looked good,
Yeah.
and they continue to look good. So I feel like there's probably more momentum, especially for a Ravens team at home. And it's like, with two really good teams that I think are evenly matched, I'd rather take a team that's at home catching points. Especially
Yeah.
field. So
Yeah.
I
And
like
Gabe
that.
Davis hasn't played practice this week either. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just think maybe the Bills they're still ailing a bit, and this is
Yeah.
kind of a time where they have somewhat of an excuse built in to lose, and maybe we
Yeah.
should take advantage of that window.
Yep. Yep. Okay, cool. Next game we got Chargers and Texans. The game is at Houston, and the Texans are getting 5.
Yeah, so I mean maybe it's too cute of a pick, but I do like the Texans +5 here.
Mhm.
I think this is maybe another game that they might be able to steal outright, kind of like what we saw from the Jags last week.
Yeah.
I do think the Jags are much better than the Texans, but I do think that we're kind of seeing a similar, it's kind of trending that way, right? I mean, the Chargers are not looking good. Herbert did not look good. He completed like 50% of his passes. And we saw at the end of that Chiefs game when he really shouldn't have come back in. I don't think he should be playing right now.
Yeah.
I didn't watch like the tape. I was just looking at the box score of the last game. But I mean, in that last drive against the Chiefs game, yes, he did bring him down. He did get the backdoor cover, right? Yeah, they still lost outright, didn't they? But I mean, he had some of those throws where it's like, he stepped up and he had one where he had a guy wide open for a first down, and he was stepping up towards the line of scrimmage and he just threw like an absolute duck 5 yards. And that
Yeah.
was that was the moment where, and again, he did still go on to lead back that comeback, but that could just be a pure adrenaline thing. I think
Yeah.
he's hurt, and I don't think his ribs are feeling right. They're not running the ball well. Keenan Allen did practice today, but he did leave practice early. So I feel like the team's still not right. Joey Bosa's out. He's getting surgery. I think it's a sneaky +5. I mean, you saw what I was writing too. I do have questions. I think Staley might not be the guy. This
I
feels like a team that's going to go, 9-8 every year. They fire him. They bring in a guy that's supposed to elevate him, and then maybe we can see from there. But I don't think Staley has it in him. And I think this is maybe a game where the Texans are sneaky and can cover that +5, if not win outright and steal a
yeah.
game at
Yeah.
home.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I've got questions about Staley. That Dream podcast I listened to with RJ Bell and Fezzik, they talk quite a bit about Staley this week. And I think, the general consensus and impression from them, and they're pretty sharp guys, is, you know, close games late, there's an element of luck, but it's now becoming more of a trend with Staley in terms
Hmm.
of the decisions that he's making. And it really may just be that he just doesn't know how to make the right decisions late in
Yeah.
game, and doesn't really know how to kind of manage the talent, and the team that he's got. The injuries are piling up for them. The Texans are one of four teams that are still undefeated against the spread, so they have covered
Hmm.
in all 3 games. Davis Mills he's 5-2 against the spread as a home dog. He's won 3 in a row against the spread as a home dog. Uh, yeah, Chargers don't feel right. Texans are home. They've been a sneaky cover team. Seems, and again, we don't need them to win. Good teams win, great teams cover. Um, getting 5 at home against a team that just doesn't look right. Texans does feel like a good pick there. So I'm with you on it.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Next game, Lions at home against the Seahawks. Lions are laying 4. And according to my stats, this is the first time in 26 games that the Lions are favored.
Yeah, so that screams take the Seahawks to me. Um,
Ah,
I mean, so like the Lions, I mean, this feels like a game, and I can check too, but I wouldn't be surprised if like the public's all over the Lions here. Um, Hold on, I'm pulling it up right now.
I'm looking on Odd Sharks too.
It's not too much. It's pretty
Uh,
close, but
Odd Sharks is
um,
showing 66% on the Lions.
what's that?
Odd Shark is showing 66% on the
All
Lions.
right, yeah. Action Network had it a little bit had it lower, more in the like 53, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, I think the Seahawks are okay. I don't think they're that bad. You know, yes, they lost to the Falcons. I don't think the Falcons are that bad, and we can get to that in a future pick. But Swift, it sounds very doubtful. He hasn't been ruled out or anything, but they're
Ooh,
also
I don't.
talking about him sitting out through the bye week, which is next week, and then I think the bye week is week 6 for them.
Yep.
So they're already talking about that. So that's never a good sign when it comes to playing this Sunday. And St. Brown, I don't think he's practiced this week. And like I said, I don't think the Seahawks are that bad. I think this is a game that they can compete in. Last week's game was kind of a coin flip with the Falcons. They definitely could have won that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like, seeing the Lions finally being a favorite at home, it just seems too easy. I see the injuries. I see the Seahawks. I don't think they're as bad as maybe they've looked on paper. I feel like people are kind of ruling them out. I know part of my take's been very against Geno, saying that, sure they had the big win week 1, but overall it's like people wrote Geno Smith off for a reason because he's been dog shit for years, and then he has a decent week 1 and a pretty big win against a team that was definitely overrated. And maybe, he was giving himself too much love. But, I feel like because of that, the Seahawks have been written off. I kind of like them +4 here. I think it's much more of a coin flipping in that instance. Give me the dog, especially over a field goal.
Yeah, I was maybe leaning Detroit, but as I'm listening to you a little bit, I'm kind of swinging back to the other side and thinking Seahawks. The other thing too, it's funny, like the Geno Smith hate, he's also been popping up because I think I don't remember what year it was, but there's been a lot of today specifically. It must have been like this day, however many years ago. He had that fucking ridiculous game in college where he like went off. I think they scored 70 points and he threw
Yeah.
for 8 touchdowns.
Oh, yeah.
And was just like lighting it up all over the field. So there's a little bit of like, and Gino balled out a little bit back in the day.
Oh, it was
Um,
amazing in college.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, 8 touchdowns and 70 points in a game is absurd.
Yeah.
Like, you know. Um, but yeah, I mean, the injuries do seem to be piling up a little bit. And, you know, I think there's been a lot of love, obviously, for Williams as the backup there, and he's they talk a little bit about kind of like what he means to that locker room, but like
I think
he's
it's
also
just different though
he's not
when
a starter.
yeah,
Like
yeah. When Swift's coming out and then you're getting carries compared to a full week of you being a starter. Sometimes it's not always a good thing in terms of putting up numbers. And
it doesn't always translate, and then
yeah.
with yeah with St. Brown, potentially, not practicing, don't really know if he's going to play, don't, and if he does play, we don't really know like how they're going to use him. I mean, sometimes guys like that end up being a decoy and
Yeah,
they
like
don't.
this to me, this just feels like a game where a lot of people are going to blindly bet the Lions for so many reasons. People love
Yeah.
them. They've been covering the spread. Dan
Yeah.
Campbell's been great against the spread. They're a
Yeah.
much better team. They have the hard knocks bump and everything. And then, Sunday comes around and they're going to be losing in the second half to the Seahawks.
They're
And everyone's going
favorite.
to be like, what do you mean Amon-Ra St. Brown has 2 targets? What do you mean DeAndre Swift's not playing? It just feels like one of those games. And, because of that, I just feel like, I've been saying the last couple weeks, I like picking ugly. I like coming with the ugly cards, and the Seahawks feel like a perfect team for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can get down with this pick. I like, and I think by now I also enjoy fading the public a little bit.
Yeah.
Which it seems like would be doing. Okay, next game. I don't think I want to touch this game.
I'll pass it because I mean my whole thing was like I feel like the Steelers win this, but this could be one of those, win but not cover despite a 3.5 point spread.
Yeah.
I like Tomlin in this matchup. Sometimes you just got to take the coaching matchup there, but 3.5 can get a little bit tricky. And
Yeah.
I do think
Well,
I'm not big on Zach Wilson. I don't think
I,
the return of Zach
I,
Wilson's anything great.
yeah, and I know you're not big on him, but at the same time, I'm also just kind of like, I don't really know what they're going to look like with him back. Like
Yeah.
I almost just want to stay away from it. I want to see what he does, and just try and get a read on like, what that offense, what that
Yeah. I
team.
mean, to me, this just screams Steelers last second field goal.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking the Jets just because I think I see a
Yeah.
half point edge,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, no, no. I agree. It's not enough for me to make a.
Big Cat said that the other day. He was talking about they do whose spread is it or whose line is it anyway?
That's
So they
funny.
read
Yeah.
off a game and then they guess what the spread's gonna be.
Yeah.
And I forget what game it was for, but he guessed it being like a 5 point spread.
Yeah.
And he I think it was the London game. And
Yeah.
so I think he guessed like, Vikings minus 4.5. And then Hank reads it, he goes, it's Vikings minus 2.5. He goes, oh, so my models give it a 2 point edge.
2 point.
His model just being him
Yeah.
guessing off the top of
Yeah.
his head.
Yeah. All right. We'll pass on this one.
Yeah.
All right. Next game, you got Philly at home against the Jaguars, surging Jaguars, and the Jags are getting 6.5 here.
This is a tough one to read because I feel like it's two teams that people are kind of getting behind right now.
Yeah.
Um, I do lean the Jags here, though. I thought maybe the Commanders could be the trap game for the Eagles last week. I think maybe this could be it too. Maybe this is just something that I'm just going to be chasing all season or something. But it's that same thing. It's that 6.5 point spread. I feel like we've seen how the Eagles have looked so far, and maybe Vegas just wants people to hammer that under a touchdown. But the
Yeah.
Jags, they've been good, and I think this could also be a bit of a prove it game for the Jags. I think Trevor Lawrence has looked really good. I think he's breaking out. I've been saying since last year, I think him and Mac Jones are two hits from that quarterback class. I haven't been impressed with Trey Lance, but I was willing to kind of let the jury be out on him. Justin
Yeah.
Fields doesn't look good. Zach Wilson doesn't look good, but I think two guys you can feel good about. Fantasy aside, because Mac Jones is not a great fantasy quarterback, but he's a winning quarterback. He can get the job done. I feel the same thing with Trevor Lawrence. I think we're starting to see him kind of, you know, grow into that mold that we were kind of forecasting with him being such a generational talent. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think this could be a chance for the Jaguars to kind of prove themselves. And it doesn't have to be a win. It can just be, a 3, 4, 6 point loss. But I do kind of like them to keep it within a touchdown here.
Yeah, the other thing I'll add too that I've noticed with the Eagles is they've been a dominant first half team, but they've almost been non-participants in the second half.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of look at the journey of the first three games, like they played the Lions, who are a scrappy team that's got some dog in them, and the Lions battled back and covered in that game. But then you've got the Colts and Commanders in weeks 2 and 3, where the Eagles got off to a hot start, go into the half dominating. Colts and Commanders, no fight. I mean, just two cowardly teams. But I think the Jags are very similar to the Lions here in that, even if the Eagles got off to a hot start, I think this Jaguars team is just going to fight, because I feel like they got a lot of energy and spirit, a
Yeah.
lot of momentum right now. You talked about Trevor Lawrence. It does feel like, coaching, players, there's some things that are happening down there where we're starting to finally kind of see, what he's got at this level. Two explosive backs, weapons. I like them with the points.
Yeah.
And again, like the Eagles have struggled to kind of show that they can really put together like a complete game. And I think against a team that's got some momentum, that's kind of coming in after a convincing win, struggling Chargers team. I mean, we talked about the Chargers, and there's no doubt that they're not right.
Yeah.
But that was still, I mean, the Jags dominated them.
Yeah.
Like went in there and took care of business. So yeah, I like them getting 6.5 here. I think it's a
Yeah.
nice pick. So all right. We move on to the next game. We get the Cowboys at home laying 3 against the Commanders. So that's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely uninteresting game, kind of ugly, but I just have a gut feeling the Commanders win this outright. That's kind of all I got on it. I just feel like I don't know. I think Cooper Rush has looked pretty good, I will say, but I just
Yeah.
feel like it's one of those, the backup quarterback comes in, you kind of have that grace honeymoon period, and then you are reminded of why they're a backup quarterback that has never been able to get a starting job. Because Cooper Rush, he's not, I don't think he's a spring chicken,
Yeah.
is he? How old is he?
Oh, I have no idea.
I'll look it up right now.
It's I'll tell you, Cowboys are a huge public favorite right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Huge.
Cooper Rush is 28. He's been in the league for 6 years. So, you know, sure he can come in, on a whim and look all right. But I feel like, now we got some tape piling up. I think it's time that the Cowboys kind of just you know, come back a little down to earth and start wanting Dak back.
Yeah.
So because of that, it's kind of just just straight off of pure gut, I kind of just go right to the Commanders +3.
Yeah, I mean I could lean that way, but it's an ugly game for me, and it's not one that I
Yeah, not one of
love.
my picks. We can always just move on, but
Yeah, I'd probably rather just move on. I think we got some better picks. All right, let's go to the next game. So we got the Browns at the Falcons. Falcons are getting 1.5.
yeah, this feels like way too low of a line for me. The Browns 2-1. They've looked pretty good. Jacoby Brissett's coming to kind of, he's looking serviceable, right?
Yeah,
And it's kind of like what we've been talking about, where the Browns, they're built to be a Super Bowl team. They're just missing their Super Bowl quarterback. So because of that, I just wonder why this is a 1.5 point spread. I know that they're on the road, and I know the Falcons did win last week, but it just feels too low and kind of out of principle that makes me want to take the Falcons as small home dogs. That
I,
-1.5 on the road just feels like a trap to me every time. And
yeah,
because of that, I lean the Falcons.
yeah. That's kind of my reaction too. Is again just trying to sniff out these lines that feel weird, that feel like traps.
Yeah.
Especially kind of knowing like what it almost seems like they want us to take the Browns.
Yeah. And Miles Garrett out, you could always try and
That's
kind of
true.
play up the play for
Yeah.
Miles Garrett angle, but at the same time, that's a huge
Oh,
hole that it leaves
that's
on their
that's
defense.
that's a
And
huge hole. And
yeah,
I think
I
too,
think that kind of outweighs the inspiration to go out there and do it for them.
well, and I think too, like just kind of seeing some of the things that Atlanta did as an offense last week, getting Kyle Pitts more involved. That's now a couple games in a row that you've seen, what's his name, Drake
Drake
London,
London.
being involved, being kind of that first second read in that offense. The offense was moving fast.
Yeah, Mariota looks good enough. Cordarrelle Patterson, I think he just won Player of the Week.
Yep. Yeah.
Offensive player of the week. I mean, he's been good, and that's
Yep.
the thing. I mean, Patterson was very good for the first half. He definitely faded at the end of last year, but he also had an ankle sprain going into that game against the Pats, and it was kind of after that he didn't look right. So that could also just be that type of thing. I mean, maybe he does have a full 17 in him, but at least for now, it looks like he's at the very least a very fast starter, and maybe that's maybe the Falcons could be a little surprising to start this year.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yeah, I like this pick. I can get down with it. So I've got it as a like for us.
Yep.
All right, next game, we got the Panthers at home, -1 against the Cardinals. Very,
Yeah, so
very
this is another line that just kind of stinks. And it's just another one just kind of out of principle. I lean the Panthers.
I'll tell you, the Cardinals are a bad football team.
Yeah.
It's like I can't believe we're saying it, given some of the weapons that they have, but they look awful and they look completely out of sorts. This was another thing they were talking about on the Dream podcast. Like, if you go and look at their win, their chances of winning, their odds of winning live in game over the course of the first 3 games of the season, they have been essentially out of every single game that they've played in, outside of that like miracle comeback, huge monumental
Yeah.
collapse by the Raiders. But it was
Yeah.
like up until that fourth quarter when that process started, they were out of that game. They had like probably a single digit win percentage in that game. And then, you think about they were out of that Chiefs game very quickly, in week 1, and they were just thoroughly dominated over the course of that game last week against the Rams. It's a bad football team. But then, the other thing, like with the Panthers, is like what's going on with McCaffrey.
Yeah.
He practiced. I mean, that could just be a thing where like the intention is for him to play, but he's not practicing this week. My reaction is to lean Panthers, but I don't know. This game just I think overall this game just kind of stinks to me. And I'd almost rather just kind of pass on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially because, I'd almost feel Or no, I guess yeah, I guess I feel the same way. I was gonna say if it was flipped and the Panthers were the underdogs, I'd almost want to jump on them more, same way that we jumped on the Falcons or that we like the Falcons. But yeah, I mean, it just feels like a trap of all traps, right? I mean,
Yeah.
why the hell are the Arizona Cardinals? I don't care that they're on the road. I don't care that they're going to the East Coast, but I mean, I guess these are valid points to at least use against them. But why the hell are they underdogs against the Panthers? The Panthers suck. And
Yeah.
you
But
know, I
I
mean, the
but I
Panthers
think
they
the
came out, they
Cardinals.
got a gritty win last week, and I think that maybe, I mean, we could still pass on it, but I do think at least it's something to kind of put a pin in it and keep an eye on it. But I think that these are kind of the spots that we should like the Panthers in. I think, I mean, they lost by 2 points, they lost by 3 points, and they won by 8 against the Saints. I think that, when you kind of get these close games, I think these are the spots. So maybe if it's not this week, it could be another week. But I think it's these tight games, maybe against not so good teams. That's when you want to be looking at the Panthers.
I mean, look, I do think it's time to start thinking about the Cardinals as just not a good football team.
Yeah.
Um,
Or at least not a first half team. I mean, it could be kind of a, maybe they figure it out. Maybe they flip things and maybe instead of starting hot like they have in the past and fading, maybe
yeah,
they're a
yeah,
team that comes on really strong in the second half, and that could be a thing too. We can look at these games and see, maybe it's not always about the wins and losses, but how are they playing, right? And because teams gonna lose games all the time, right? One team's gonna lose every game. So
yeah,
if they're looking good and they're looking competitive, then maybe they could be a team that we're eyeing for a second half push if their value's down and all of a sudden they're getting more points than maybe they would be if they were starting off 9-0 like they did last year or something.
yeah. Odd Shark has
Especially when DeAndre Hopkins get back. I feel like that could maybe be the time. I
yeah,
forget
that might
who it was that was saying it, but um, when you have DeAndre Hopkins out, you look at what their offense is, right? And this is what I said about him last year. When I remember DeAndre Hopkins came off the field, he just kind of pulled up lame, had to come off the field, get massaged out a little bit.
yeah,
And as soon as that happened, the Cardinals, this is when they were playing so well and their
yeah,
offense looked great. And then as soon as he came off the field, the Cardinals looked like, they went from being a playoff team to looking like a 3, 4, 5 win team. And that was
yeah,
just from Hopkins running one play and then coming off the sideline. That's all it took for a difference to be made. So I think
yeah,
right now, I think that is what they're missing because he's such a big bully. All of a sudden, you go from his huge body to Hollywood Brown being in that same role. And I think that they might just be too small right now. And I think that for right now, it's kind of this is the time. And then when Hopkins comes back, that's maybe when you want to jump back on him.
yeah. Well, and Odd Shark's got 83% on the Cardinals.
Yeah, I mean, that just makes me and
They're
that's
but
all I
they're
said. I like it's not that I like the Panthers, it's just like another thing where out of principle, I just feel like it has to be the Panthers.
and they're I mean, it's Odd Sharks, whatever algorithm. I don't know how accurate these, their algorithm is, but
Yeah.
they're predicting a touchdown win by the Panthers. So it's out of principle, maybe, and again, this,
Well, because isn't that what I was saying? I think maybe after week what are we? This is week 4, so maybe after week 2, I think I was saying it's like, if it looks like a rat, if it smells like a rat,
it's a rat.
maybe it's a rat. And
Yeah,
and that's what I was saying. Where more times now, out of principle, maybe we should just be taking these. I mean, by that same thing, we should have been taking the Colts last week, and we ended up passing. I don't think that we made a mistake because like we said, even the 2 losses we had, we were right there. But
yeah,
I think we're finding more of these picks, and if we're getting good at kind of sniffing these out, then maybe we should try and play to our strengths, or at least our perceived strengths.
yeah, yep, yep. Okay. All right. Next game, Raiders at home -3 against the Broncos.
Yeah, Raiders seemed like an auto bet, and then that's kind of why I have some pause, and all of a sudden I start looking at the Broncos +3. Uh, I did send you a stat the other day. Vegas, since
Yeah,
moving to Vegas, the Raiders are 5-1 against the spread versus Denver. Of course, that's before Russell Wilson. That's with guys like Drew Lock playing quarterback and Teddy Bridgewater. He probably covered actually, isn't that his thing?
yeah,
And
I'm sure.
then but then you also have to say, is Vegas really going to go 0-4?
Yeah,
And but then that stuff that you said about Josh McDaniels today, it does make me think maybe they do.
maybe,
Maybe
maybe he's
maybe it's just a mess over there, and maybe they do. And it wasn't a good looking game, but I do think that it was a very good win for Denver. Against the Niners. And I do still like their roster more. I think that Russell Wilson, he could still throw the ball. It's more accuracy that's been his issue so far. He's not out there throwing ducks. He's not looking washed in that sense. It's just that he hasn't really been crisp. And that could just be a timing thing, shaking out
Right.
the rust. I mean, this was a team that brings in a brand new quarterback and they want to make a push and they don't play at all in the preseason. So there could
Weird.
be a huge rust factor that we're severely underrating here with the Broncos.
Yeah.
Um, you know, if it was any other team, or I should say maybe a worse team or a less talented team, because Broncos, they might not be playing well, but there's still a ton of talent there, then I'd say Raiders would be an auto bet. But then like I said, I just, because of that, I have a little bit of pause and it makes me look at the Broncos plus
I
3 a little more
yeah.
favorably.
I wonder if it's a pass game for us though, just because
Yeah.
like I do feel like there's just so many questions around each team, that it almost just seems like let's maybe just let them go and play it out and just
Yeah.
not have a stake in it, because yeah, I mean, Raiders don't seem like an 0-3 team. They don't seem like a team that should be 0-4 either, but maybe they do, and maybe McDaniels is just like on the hot seat way sooner than he should be.
Yeah.
And is this the week that the Broncos knock off the rust? We don't know. Is it rust? Like, but maybe just let those guys.
Yeah.
They can figure it out on their own. They don't need us.
Yeah.
All right, Packers at home -9.5 against the Patriots. We have no idea if Mac's playing. Seems like probably not.
But
But
it sounds like he actually might.
I mean, that's where I'm just like, I don't. I mean, but then
Yeah,
like if
I was hoping that we'd get double digits here.
yeah,
Especially when you get 10 plus. It does, it could just be a game where the Pats just run the ball 50 times, and because
yeah,
of that, they keep it close. I mean, they still have a good defense. I'm
yeah,
still not sold on this Packers team. I just I'm not sure if I'm seeing the upside with the Packers offense. I think that
mhm,
defense is definitely very good. I think this could be a very low scoring game.
yeah,
Um, I do worry that, the Packers score, a touchdown or a field goal late to go up by 10 or get it to 14. But I do think this is a game where the Pats can keep it close for most of it. Does it end close and does it end within 9.5? I'm not sure. But I
yeah.
think it's even one where if they play by 13, and we took the Pats, we'd be like, fuck, like we were like right there the whole time.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, yeah. I mean, it could be a one possession game, and then, it's a late turnover, and the Packers turn it into a score, and yeah, we get fucked.
Yeah.
It's we kind of get left with the same feeling that we had in the Ravens game this past weekend.
Yeah.
In it the whole time, but we're we end up outside the number. Um, so I don't know. It feels like a pass to me.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. Here's maybe a rat line. Chiefs -1 at Tampa Bay.
Yeah, so I'm iffy on it because I really like the Bucks here in a bounce back at home. Mike Evans is coming back. I think Mike Evans is going to get peppered with targets. Um, but at the same time, this could just be just a weird season for the Bucks. I mean, Tom Brady's got the huge divorced energy. No Godwin, or at least I don't think he's been practicing this week. I don't know about Julio's
Brady's,
been doing.
Brady's got BDE.
Yeah. And Russell Gage, I mean, he finally had a very good game for them, but
Yeah.
part of me does wonder, it's like, maybe this is just a season where the Bucks kind of just scrape by, they kind of put it together at the end of the season. I don't
Yeah.
think that their playoff hopes are in any danger, but this might be a season where they got to work for it a lot harder. And
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, it does make me iffy. I was kind of going into this thinking the Bucks were like a must pick.
Yeah.
But now it kind of almost feels like a pass just because I'm not really sure. I feel like it's way too much of a coin flip. I do kind of like the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs are very capable of just coming in and just being so solid across the board and holding on to the ball. So yeah,
They
I don't know. I'm maybe a little too iffy on it now.
going on with where the game's being played. Have they made a decision on that yet either? Like,
Yeah, and
do we?
I don't know. I don't know what the deal is, and that could be the big thing too. It's just so much uncertainty around it. Maybe it's just a pass all around.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I'd probably be comfortable passing.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. All right. Let's talk about the last game. This is actually another game that I don't know. Kind of feels like a weird line to me. But the 49ers at home, they're laying 1.5 to the Rams.
Yeah, so I didn't know if you had like any stats on this. I don't know how McVay and Shanahan do against each other because I could kind of be swayed either way if you had a strong opinion on either side.
Yeah. I so my my initial reaction to this game was, um, you know, kind of fading the 49ers because I think losing what's his name, Trent Williams.
Yeah.
Uh, Losing Trent Williams on the line, and this is maybe even like more of a long term fade for the Niners, than it is like kind of like an acute diagnosis within the week. But with Trent Williams out, Jimmy G, his blind side is going to be vulnerable. And you're going up against a D line that's really good with like Aaron Donald on there. Um, Jimmy G's also very injury prone.
Yeah.
We're already on their backup QB. And so it's a little bit of like, losing their best old lineman on Jimmy G's blind side. It's kind of like, man, if for an injury prone guy, if he takes a big hit and goes down, like
Yeah.
they could be in serious, serious trouble.
Yeah.
Because they also got, they got rid of like I don't even know who their third string is anymore. Like, um, but I I thought that they looked all out of sorts in that game against that. I mean, that was such an ugly football game. Maybe it was just a product of that because again, like they got a good defense. Um, they do still run the ball really well. They've got some dynamic players, obviously with Debo and Ayuk and Kittle. Kittle's back. But I look at this and I'm just like, I don't really understand how they're favored by a point and a half.
Yeah.
I don't. I feel like the Rams are a better football team. I feel like they're a healthier football team right now. Cam Akers is starting to look better. Um, but then I'm just like, does that mean am I just reading this wrong?
Yeah.
I don't know. 61% of the public on OddsShark is on the Rams. But then OddsShark is, I mean, they've actually got the 49ers as uh 10-point winners in this one.
Yeah. I mean, this could just be like a thing I'm making up in my head, but I do feel like the Niners are really good at winning ugly and winning the games where they're
Yeah.
so down and it feels like they're way out of it. And they just kind of drag teams back into the mud and they make it work.
San Fran has covered all 5 meetings since 2020, including the playoffs. Um, Kyle Shanahan 7-16-2 against the spread as a home favorite, but he's 4-0 in that role in his past 4 games after losing his previous 9 games in that role outright. McVay is 7-3 against the spread as a road dog. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think I lean the Niners here, but I also think we got enough picks to choose from that we don't have to you
yeah, we
know.
do. I mean, we've got in terms of games, it seemed like we really liked. We got the Titans plus 3.5, the Ravens plus 3, um, Texans plus 5, Seahawks plus 4, Jaguars plus 6.5. Got a lot of dogs here. Falcons plus 1.5 and Panthers -1. So we've got 7 games that we really liked. Plus, we were leaning Saints 2.5 and Bears 3.
Yeah. So I mean, so I really like the Titans plus 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be down to put that down if you are.
Yep, me too. I do really like the Jaguars plus 6.5.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Uh,
like that too. I mean,
I like the Ravens plus 3.
I like the Ravens plus 3. Hold on, let me see okay. I like the Ravens plus 3. I just think that's a very good team. And it's kind of the same reason that I took the Dolphins tonight. It's just like, sometimes she's gonna ride the good news out. I mean, I know that we like the Jags, going against the Eagles, but yeah, it's like sometimes like when you kind of see a team that you really like, it's like, maybe you should just say, fuck it. Maybe I just know more than they do. When they're making these spreads. And
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I like that Ravens line. I mean, I kind of really do like that Seahawks line, I must say.
Yeah.
I like that Seahawks line. I like that Falcons line too. And even I just like our thinking behind those two.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if there's any that you like more. I like that Texans too. Those are 3 that I think we got really good thinking. And then kind of like with the Panthers, like we were saying, it's more of just an out of principle thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think like Hmm. I think I probably feel better about that Seahawks pick than I do over the others. Um, yeah, that Panthers thing is just interesting. Of like, you know, it's the rat theory.
Yeah,
That to me, and it's just like, I don't know, that's one, like, do we take that one out of like, is that the game where, like, that's our rat game of the week,
yeah,
and maybe we take that over, the Texans, +5 against the Chargers, who, you know, um, and then what was the other one we had? We were looking at Falcons +1.5 at home.
yeah,
Um, yeah, because we got Titans, Ravens, Seahawks, Jaguars. I think we feel pretty committed to.
yeah,
So then it becomes the question of, yeah, Texans, Falcons, or Panthers. Maybe we go with the rat game,
yeah,
and leave the Texans and Falcons behind.
yeah.
I feel comfortable leaving the Bears. I feel comfortable leaving the Saints because
Yeah,
I
I mean,
think,
I think it's definitely between those three,
yeah,
Texans, Falcons, Panthers. I think it's, yeah, I'd kind of go Panthers, Falcons, Texans as far as where I'd rank them. Um, yeah. So what do you think? Should we just go with the Panthers then?
yeah. So Panthers, Jaguars, Seahawks, Ravens, and Titans.
Jags, Seahawks. Yep.
So we're going, yeah, 4 dogs and a 1 point favorite. It's essentially a pick 'em.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I like taking points. Okay. I feel
Cool.
good about this. Yeah. All right. Uh, excellent.
All
Well,
right. Sounds
week
good.
4. Here we go. 4 and
Yeah.
1.
All right. We'll call it at that.
All right. Later.
Yeah.